Continues to be all about telecom. The record-breaking 3G auctions continue. The all-India price for 3G spectrum has crossed the $3 billion mark on day 27. Akanksha Sethi joins us now with the highlights. Akanksha, crossing the $3 billion mark, and the all-India revenues stand in excess of $12 billion.
Absolutely. Let me put that in rupees crore. The figure is even bigger. 56,631 crores. That's what government revenues stand at the end of day 27. The All India price is at 14,026 crores. That's crossing the $3 billion mark. Remember, analyst projections had also projected it at $2.5 billion. So it's crossed analyst projections, the ministry's own estimates, and of course, the government budgeted estimate of 35,000 crores. It had crossed many days back. We still don't have the numbers for each and every circle, but 5 rounds of the 3G auction were completed today, and that takes the total number of rounds to 153. We can't say definitely when the auction is going to get over, but sources tell us that it is definitely nearing its end, and it is likely that by the end of this week the auction will draw to a close, but even then it is expected to have garnered about 60,000 crore rupees.
Well, thanks, Akanksha, for those details. Meanwhile, more action from this space. The telecom regulator today unveiled its proposals on spectrum management. The regulator made sweeping recommendations on additional allotment of 2G spectrum, saying that allotment only up to 6.2 megahertz was contractual, and anything beyond that will have to be paid for, even those who already hold those excess spectrum.
Well, that's right, Harsha. In fact, as per the recommendation, service providers, the one-time charge will be paid at the current price for spectrum up to 8 megahertz, beyond which it will be charged at 1.3 times the current price. TRAI Chairman Sarma clarified that the current price means today's 3G spectrum price, and he has more from the TRAI Chairman on the highlights of the 2G policy.
Well, first of all, let me dispel the impression that we have set a limit of 6.2 megahertz. That is already existing in the licenses that have been issued from time to time. From 2001 onwards, that 6.2 megahertz limit exists. What we have indicated is we have clearly brought out that is the contracted spectrum. So the second part of your question relates to what is the impact that it is going to have on tariffs and on government revenues. Insofar as government revenues are concerned, we have now said, because so far the spectrum is being given as per the license without charging them any additional entry fee. We are now clearly, what we have stated is beyond 6.2, whether person holds the spectrum currently or an entity gets this spectrum assigned subsequently, beyond 6.2 the price must be paid. About our estimation is that 156 megahertz of spectrum is held actually beyond the limit of 6.2.
156 megahertz
across India. And going by the current price, it's as you just now pointed out, the price is still being discovered. But it might mean about 30 to 35,000 crores. About 35,000 crores is what our estimate is, what people will have to pay.
All right. Now let me come to the other part, sir. This is a major controversy, and you seem to have tried to deal with it in the fullest possible extent possible. That is the entire issue of why was 2G spectrum not auctioned from a particular point of time, especially around the time when new licenses were issued 2.5, 3 years back. And on that, the summary of the recommendations clearly says that it was not possible. Can you explain and expand on that so that it sort of puts to rest whatever doubts people may have?
You see, so far as we are concerned, we notice that the license conditions, for the Unified Access Services license conditions, that is the only form of license that is available today, and there are certain guidelines which were issued in 2003 and later also in 2005. Basically, the 2003 guidelines are, these guidelines, whether 2003 or 2005, all these guidelines clearly stipulate that the license fee that is payable and various other issues, all of them will be the same as for cellular operator. That is how the licenses were issued in 2003, 2004, 2006 and 2007. All these were issued only at this 1658 crore. I mean, pan India, of course. Obviously, it will be the actual payment being depending on the share of a particular or the license, the amount that is chargeable in a particular service area. So, it is, and this is how it was in January 2008 also. So that's as far as we are concerned.
By when do you expect the DOT to consider your recommendations on the overall spectrum policy, and do you see them accepting them in toto, or do you fear some sort of cherry picking of recommendations that has happened with previous regulatory advice?
Well, I have no comment on what happened or what did not happen in the previous exercise. I think that's not necessary. Well, look, they have reached the DOT just today, so I think it's a little premature to really even guess how long they will take. We naturally hope that our recommendations will be accepted, and these are all integrated recommendations. They have linked with one another. So we would like them to be looked at in a holistic manner, just as we try to look at the issues in a holistic manner.
Well, some of those answers must be making the Telecom Minister very happy indeed. But for more perspective on TRAI's recommendations on spectrum management, joining us is KPMG Jaideep Ghosh and our very own Siddharth Zarabi. Siddharth, you go first. Take us through what the TRAI had to say on norms for excess spectrum and for additional 3G blocks.
Well, you heard the TRA chairman talk about the fact that according to their estimation, it is 156 megahertz which is held in excess to these new proposed norms. Really, at this point of time, if you look at the impact, I think Bharat Sanchar and Mahanagar Telephone Nigam Limited are the most seriously impacted operators, because Bharat Sanchar has in excess of the prescribed limits in most circles, and so does MTNL in Delhi and Bombay. The limit is 10 megahertz, it has 12.4 megahertz each. That apart, Bharti, Vodafone and other companies are also impacted to some extent. So clearly this revenue figure of 30 to 35,000 crore, if it is converted into policy, whether the operators will pay up, that is going to take some time to pan out. But I'll quickly draw your attention to two other points in the recommendations. One is the TRAI's recommendations on mergers and acquisitions, and I think that is also the second big news of the day. The fact that it is saying that DOT nod for M&A is a must, a prior nod is must. It is specifying a transfer fee of 5%. It is specifying the total limit of spectrum that a merged entity can have, a GSM entity at 14.4 megahertz, a CDMA entity at 10 megahertz. It is saying that you cannot, the only mergers will be allowed in the same service area. It is sort of doing away with the wireline and wireless distinction and is looking at a combined market share, both in terms of the revenues that this operator may have and the user base, percentage of 30% being put in place there. So that M&A, I think, is one of the big things which will really mean, and if you dovetail it with other recommendations, including the fact that new operators who have 4.4 megahertz have been put last in the list of priority to get additional spectrum, therefore it makes a case for the larger existing operators to go ahead and acquire the existing ones. That is the other big news. And two or three smaller points. Fact that it is suggesting that for 3G you should offer further blocks without an auction process within 12 months of the closure of the current auction which is going on, and were it not to happen, then do an auction next year. So clearly some sort of opportunity for all the winning bidders, and I presume they will have some right of first refusal to go ahead and get more 3G. Whether they'll be willing, that's a big question. The third part really has to do with recommendations on spectrum sharing. Spectrum trading has not been allowed, but a clear-cut policy has been enunciated on sharing. However, sharing will not be allowed for those who are 3G operators, so clearly raising a question mark as to what extent of sharing is going to be possible. So really 64 recommendations. The details are still being studied by most people, 400 odd pages, but I think the impact is going to pan out, and the key thing will be, will the DOT accept this, and will the DOT use this as an opportunity to finally, at last, put to rest the entire 2G controversy and perhaps take the entire industry to the next growth phase. Of course, for the industry, 3G plus 2G, we are already looking at 100,000 crore figure. Whether they'll be happy, I don't know. And what will happen tariffs? Again, that's a big question. The TRA chairman said that they will have to relook at their policy on forbearance for tariffs. Back to you.
All right, Siddharth, let's go across now to Jaideep Ghosh of KPMG. He joins us. Jaideep, you just heard Siddharth. They're saying that the telecom operators are not going to be happy picking up a 100,000 crore rupee tab. But that aside, and the fact that the DOT may or may not accept these recommendations in their entirety, what is the impact going to be on the big boys, the Bhartis, the Reliance Communications, and even the public sector companies like MTNL and BSNL on the back of these recommendations?
Yeah, I think, the figure is, I think, addition of the 3G bids that are being placed, as well as potentially the amounts to be paid by the big boys, as you said, beyond the 6.2 megahertz for GSM. Now, there are two parts. In the first part is the 3G auction, as I've said before also, it's based on individual business cases of the big boys and not so big boys. So if they are choosing to bid at, $3 billion and still it's going on, it's something that their business case, I would assume, justifies that. So I'm not particularly concerned on that part, because it's a known decision. It's based on the valuations of spectrum that the operators have, made based on assessment of their business potential, and also the valuation for not having a 3G. That's where the valuation comes in. It's not only the 3G potential, but also what if I don't have 3G? So what money am I willing to put on the table? So I think it's a fairly business conscious decision. In terms of the second part, which is, coming from the TRA recommendations which were released today, I think, I think it's just fair that in terms of, the overall spectrum limits, etc., has been kind of, suggested, and which I think is in the, a direction in the right, in the right step in the right direction, because it at least provides clarity in terms of till what spectrum, what can hold, and so on and so forth. And if, and I would think that 6.2 megahertz for GSM and 5 megahertz for CDMA in the current scenario looks to be adequate to serve most parts of the country, except perhaps, a couple of metro locations. So I think given that it is perhaps justified for an, fee or payment being asked for the additional spectrum, which is not being linked to 3G bids, but then what other option does one have? Yeah, sure.
Okay, very quickly, let me put in a question here as far as the merger and acquisition recommendations are, because this has been something that has been much awaited. The industry has been waiting for this. But do you think that on the back of what you have heard today, transfer fee and so on and so forth, we are really going to see the ball rolling in terms of consolidation for the telecom business in this country?
See, I think my reaction is, and as someone said, that it's a 485-page document, so I don't claim I've read everything, but I think the current guidelines definitely appear to be better from or facilitating a merger vis-a-vis the earlier guidelines of not being a 10% shareholding cap kind of thing. So I think 30% market share, minimum 6 operators, no distinction between wireless and wireline seems to be, again, something which is facilitating potentially some of the mergers and acquisitions to happen. So that is what I would think. Having said that, let us remember that, deals do happen based on the valuations. At this point of time, I think there is a big mismatch between the valuation, expectations between the buyer and the seller. So I'm not seeing immediately, even after a while when the recommendations do get accepted, and if it is accepted in this form, I would not think that immediately we'll see a large number of acquisitions happening, because there is significant mismatch between what new operators or mid-sized operators think of their valuation, what the incumbents think, and so on and so forth. So I think that's something which was again a business decision which will be only facilitated by the TRAI recommendations, which may be ratified by DOT.
Siddharth, come in on that. In your conversation with the chairman of the TRAI, any clarity on, how this is going to be sort of unfolded in terms of that 3-year lock-in period going away? What clarity did the chairman have to say?
I think the important point to note here is that these TRA recommendations came on the basis of an internal DOT report of last year that was called the Subodh Kumar Committee report. And the Subodh Kumar Committee report and the report of the TRA, there are several points of convergence. There are, of course, several points of divergence. the real part really in terms of M&A is something that I don't think the DOT has taken a very hardline stance on. The DOT, the officers there are aware of the fact that you need to provoke consolidation, and they were waiting for a set of recommendations from the TRA to do it. So my personal guess that they would be comfortable with the idea of 30% market share and a minimum of 6 operators, because that would serve public need and you would still have Bharat Sanchar and MTNL not going anywhere else. So I would suggest and sort of surmise that the DOT is perhaps going to look at these suggestions and receive them very warmly.
All right, hoping for a warm reception as far as these recommendations are concerned. We haven't heard from any of the operators so far, but we will hear from Reliance Communications in just a short while from now. Syed Sawafi, the CEO of Reliance Communications, will be doing a con call in just a short bit from now, and we will, of course, get you the details of that. But for the moment, Siddharth and many thanks for joining us with the details of what was announced today as far as that 2G recommendations were concerned. Up next, with the verdict out on the Ambani gas battle, the spotlight now shifts